Hello and welcome to That's Girl Speaks. Today is the first Wednesday of June, and this is episode 246. I am Amy Beth, also known as The Fat Squirrel on Instagram. No, The Fat Squirrel on Ravelry, and The Fat SQRRL on Instagram. The Fat Squirrel, but just without vowels, the squirrel part. Because believe it or not, somebody was already the Fat Squirrel. Sorry, I'm distracted by the Gustav. This week's episode will contain some knitting, but not a lot. I apologize, but I do have a finished object. Should we just do knitting first? Let's do it. So I'm going to put a picture video of my finished object in here. And so this is, I apologize, I don't have like a pair of high-waisted trousers to try it on with, because I would actually like to show you what that looks like, because I think it looks really cute in a lot of folks' photos. So while I have one of those in the queue to make, I don't have any yet. But here's my like high-waisted yoga pants. So just to give you an idea of proportion-wise, like where it would fall if you were wearing it with a high-waisted pant. I thought that might be helpful. So there it is. Also there it is with my arms completely straight, and the reason I'm doing this is so you can see potentially the amount of ease. It's always really hard to measure with linen, like what the ease is, because the project laying down is different than the measurement is on your body because of the weight of the yarn and how it hangs. But so I just wanted to give you an idea of what's going on. Oh, there it is. So there is my finished Ursa. Oh, before I go any further, in case you're like, whoa, that pink is very visually distracting, I just have some tendonitis in my elbow, so I've got my elbow taped. Am I entirely convinced that the tape helps for tendonitis? Not necessarily. It certainly helped for other things that I've had issues with. I'm not sure about the elbow. But at the same time, like, I'm just doing all of the measures, the ice, the tape, the exercise, whatever I can do for the elbow. Repetitive use injuries. Lame. And also, I am obviously feeling much better. Look at me lift this cup of coffee and not even wince. I'm wincing just a little in my heart. But but I also don't like to take this tape off until it's like ready to come off, because it would like to take my skin with it. It doesn't. I've never had an issue with it like actually, but it sometimes feels like it just might today decide that it's going to take my skin. So I'm just going to let it just chill and percolate for a while. But let's get back to what we're actually talking about. I finished my Ursa sweater. So Ursa is a pattern by Jacqueline Cieslak. And of course it is written to be knit in bulky weight wool, but it is summertime. So I knit mine out of linen. It is bulky weight, so I chose this Stacy Ariana, which is a linen tape that is listed as a bulky and that has a similar suggested gauge as that of the pattern. Now my gauge ended up being, I can't remember if it's exactly the same, but I remember it's similar. So this suggests 15 stitches to the inch. And this one is written to be a final gauge of, 12 stitches to the inch. So it's not exactly, by any stretch of the imagination, the very close, but, you know, it's linen. Yeah, wiggle room. And so actually my finished gauge is a little bit closer to what was suggested. It's actually in between that 15 and the 12 stitches per inch. But again, linen is one of those ones that's really hard to get a good gauge idea, because I don't knit with linen as much, so it's harder for me to predict how it's going to behave. B, I've never knit with the linen tape. Now this is, from what I understand, this is very similar to, for example, Quinns & Company's Kestrel. And what it is, if you don't know what I'm saying linen tape and not showing you, what it is, it's constructed from a strand of linen that's basically knit into like an I-cord. And it naturally lies into like a flat ribbon. Come on, focus, really? it naturally goes into like a flat ribbon. So lots of times when you're knitting, you get a flat. Oh my gosh, right. Let me discuss. I've re-recorded this part a few times and it's, oh, there we go. It's not been bad. Oh, look at those exciting cuticles. That's right. I'm a fancy lady. So I think I actually prefer this linen tape to, for example, Quince & Company Sparrow, which is their sport weight, traditional plied linen. I've also used Knit Picks, their linen Lindy chain, but now that I say that, that seems like it might be a tape as well. And I can't remember. But anyway, I do like this quite a bit. I think that it ends up being a little bit lighter in grist, like the, I think you get more yards per pound in a tape than you would like a solidly plied yarn, which is really helpful for linen, especially if you're knitting a sweater somewhere near my size. I'm a 56-inch finished bust, or full bust. So I think it's really helpful. I think that the tape produces a lighter garment, which is really helpful because, again, like if you're a size, you know, if you're the smallest size of this pattern, your yarn is going to be 450 yards versus my size, which is like 825 or 750. I can't remember which one I did. But, you know, it's almost double the amount of yarn. So my sweater is going to weigh almost twice as much as that smallest size. So it's really important, especially a fiber like a cotton or a linen that doesn't have memory, that's not going to like, and it also doesn't have scales. Like, again, the beautiful thing about linen, or excuse me, about wool, is that, you know, when you're doing a non-superwash wool, the wool itself has scales. And so, yes, while that wants to make it grab onto itself in the ply, it also makes itself want to grab onto itself in the yarn next to the yarn. So it's better about retaining its shape and having memory to go back to its shape if it does get stretched out during the day with the heat of your body, if it's drizzling, something like that. So that's all to say. What are we started talking about just doing a gauge swatch, and that is more challenging with a linen yarn because, again, the weight of the yarn is going to affect that quite a bit in the finished garment versus on a little square. And so you can weight your swatches. There's lots of techniques you can do, but sometimes just roll with it. It's cool. Just do it. Let's go. So I just went and did it, and it was fine. I noticed about here that my gauge was smaller than was indicated in the pattern, but it was fine. I just kept going on and increasing as I would normally. And so just worked out fine. It does have a slightly looser fit. I think the suggested ease is, I want to say 6. Come on. I know there's, oh, there you go. 2 to 6 inches of positive ease with a wool version. Mine is definitely at least 6 inches of positive ease. It may actually be even 8. But again, it's kind of hard to tell because if I lay this down flat and measure it, it's going to be different. It's going to look like there's even more positive ease than there is on my body. So it's got positive ease though. But yeah, I did not, okay. So this pattern is written, dial it back even more. Did I mention this? I will do a finished object video, but I want to get some wears in of the linen to see how it behaves and what have you before I do a final finished object video. Sorry, Gus is eating something loudly and I'm not sure what it is. Gus is our dog. So I will do a finished object video, but in the meantime, I know a lot of folks want to cast on this pattern and other patterns that are similar to it. So I will give you a little bit more information at this time. Okay. Okay. So the pattern is written with horizontal bust starts. Now, the reason that those are really great, especially in a cropped sweater, is that they don't add circumference to your sweater, so they don't make extra room for your boobs necessarily. But since a lot of these crop sweaters are made with a lot of positive ease, there's usually room for a lot of boobage, just kind of built into the ease situation. However, because your yarn, I'm going to touch my boobs a lot. Are you ready? Because the sweater has to go over the mountains. It has to, theoretically, you want it to go all the way around your boobs. Now, it's not super tight fitting, so it doesn't need to go over, but for example, if my bust only extended this far versus the full bust down here, I need a lot less fabric to go over it, right? I need that much less fabric. So, especially in a crop sweater, where the hem of it is so much closer to your bust line, having short row shaping for your cup size is super helpful in getting the hem of the sweater to lie flat versus like flipping up like a bandana bikini top kind of thing. I don't know what I just said. That's probably not accurate. But instead of it like, you know, rising up where it's like being pulled up by your boobs, the extra horizontal bust or horizontal short rows give you enough room for the sweater to go all the way over your bust and give you a flatter hemline. Now, usually I don't need to add, so your question is like, so why in this sweater versus another sweater? Well, the way my body is proportioned, I have kind of like equally big boobs and hips. That's not exactly true. My hips are bigger than my boobs, but usually you want negative ease in your hips. So the positive ease of the boob and the negative ease of the hip kind of end up being the same measurement. That is all to say that usually like the extra fabric required to go over my boobs is also required to go over my butt. So it evens out the front and back of my sweater hem, usually. But for example, like if you're a big lady and you have a big butt, if you've ever tried on a skirt and like let it sit at your natural waist and then looked in the mirror and the hemline was like this and you were like, so you had to like pull it up higher in the front. Like that's the same concept. You just need more fabric to go over that bigger bump. Oh my gosh, right. All about the lady bumps, y'all. Anyway, so the pattern is written to give you that. So the way she has you determine whether or not you need the additional short rows is that she has you measure your upper bust and your full bust, and if there's more than 2 inches of difference, she gives you guidelines for how to increase your sweater's length in the front specifically, so that you'll have an even hem. Is that a lot? I think that was sufficient. But I did not follow the pattern precisely because that's just how I roll. I did cast on for my upper bust measurement and did increase more for my bust, like I usually do, just because that is kind of how I feel like I know that things are going to fit well, and so I'm just going to keep going down that road. I've already worked that out for myself, so I'm not going to deviate from it yet. Which is one of the reasons, like, there's been 2 test knits lately that I've been like, I really want to test knit that, and then I'm like, nope. Because you can't follow rules. And that's what you gotta do when you're test knitting. Okay. Okay. So anyway, and as you can see, I was very concerned that the neckline would be too big. Not at all. You can see I'm wearing a regular tank top, and you really don't even necessarily see the tank. So it's definitely nicely centered on my shoulders. And worried about the linen stretching out, which is another concern. That was the main reason I was concerned about the neckline, is because the linen stretches so easily. But the way you finish the neckline is to go around and basically pick up to knit and bind off at the same time, which essentially, from what I understand about life, is equivalent to doing a slip stitch with crochet, which is what I ended up doing. But it should yield the same result. But I did that firmly. I did not do it tight, but I did it firm. And it definitely is there's no problem with that neckline at all. Yay. What else should I say? Of course you can see, oh, that's not good. Of course you can see that my sleeve length is not full. What I did was I was not sure what sleeve length I wanted. So essentially what I did is knit 1 ball for each sleeve. And then I'm just going to wear it like this, see how I like it. And then I was kind of a bit concerned I wouldn't have enough yarn, but ultimately I have this full skein and then probably 2/3 of another skein. So I think I could get a full sleeve out of it if I decide that that's what I want to do, or at least like a bracelet length. But I actually like this length of sleeve, especially for summer. So hopefully I will like how it works out after I've kind of worn it a few times, and I'll keep this length. But because the sleeve is just a bind off, it's super easy. I'll have to just take out the bind off and pick those stitches up and go if I want to. I don't have to rip anything back, except of course. I will say this, because of the linen probably, or not, I don't know, but I did bind off originally, just as I normally would, which was a little bit like, not loose, but looser. And that sleeve rolled quite a bit, and it rolled in like a very, because of the linen, it was like a big bump. And so it was distracting visually, I thought. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I should take that back and try to brioche it or whatever. So I just let that one sit and then started my other sleeve. And then that sleeve I thought, well, maybe I'll try to bind off more firmly. That totally did the trick. It's not rolling at all at this point. We'll see how it does for the full day of wear. But it's really not rolling at all. So I just went to the other sleeve, took out the bind off, and just knit it more firmly. So yeah, basically I'm satisfied with it. Okay. Just need to see anything else. Of course, if there's anything else I think of, I will put it in the finished object video. But I think that's all I wanted to say. Oh, I guess I could also say that there is also an Ursa minor, which I apologize. I originally thought was like the smaller sizes, like the smaller size range. It's a similar silhouette, but it has just it doesn't have the half brioche, the fun little half brioche stitch. And so I was concerned that that might not look good in the linen because it's so plump and delicious in the wool. But I actually am satisfied with how it looks, and so I'm glad that I went with the Ursa versus the Ursa minor. So yay that. She is also currently looking for test knitters. She has like a basic tee sweater coming out. It's not really that basic because, though, of course, she's awesome. And I think that there are, I don't know if there are the horizontal bust darts again. I think there are. And then there's also options if you have a non-standard bicep size. So like, for example, my sweaters are, for my bust size, my arms are always bigger than the like suggested size. So I always have to make my sleeves bigger. So this pattern will have that written in, so that you can do it either way. Right. How exciting. So yay, I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see more from her as a designer and just like as an awesome human being. So that's cool. And then the only other knitting I have to show you, I did knit more on my my colorwork sweater in the Patagonia, the Juniper Moon Patagonia, but it's just like it's another inch or two maybe on the body, so it's not very exciting. However, with elbow wonkiness, I decided to pick up something that was knit at a looser gauge and on a bigger needle. So if you ever have problems, that does sometimes help, is just to, because lots of times the tendonitis, whether you have tennis elbow or golfer's elbow or like some exciting combination of both, whatever, it's often very hard for you to grip and is aggravated by gripping motions. So sometimes it's helpful. It's just helpful in general to have different projects going at different gauges to prevent that issue. But especially if you have hurt yourself, it's always good. I mean, I guess you're not supposed to knit at all. I did that one night. It was not cool. I'm just gonna be honest with you. It was not cool. Although we'll get you to bed earlier. But I am knitting, I've had this, it's been just stagnating for a really long time, and I'm not exactly sure why. But I am knitting a Quaker yarn stretcher, and I apologize, suddenly I've got the pattern right here, by Susan Ashcroft. So it's the Quaker yarn stretcher by Susan Ashcroft, and I have knit one of them, at least one of them in the past. That's a random thread. So this is some hand spun. It's written to be knit. It's written with hand spun in mind, as 100 grams of DK weight, but this is a double skein, and so is my other one. I'm a big lady. I tend to like bigger shawls. So this hand spun has actually been caked up so long I no longer know exactly who it's from, but I know that one of the plies is from Spun Right Round and matches my glasses. So this is 8 ounces of hand spun. One ply was one 4-ounce bump and one ply was the other 4-ounce bump. And they just happen to have a lot. You know what? That's probably a lie. These are probably both the same. Because now that I'm looking at it, that color matches too good for it. Okay. These are both Spun Right Round, I'm sure, from the same colorway. I probably just bought 8 ounces of it. Because look, it's exactly the same color. What am I thinking that they're two different bumps? But anyway, so I have 8 ounces of that. But here it is over, right? Ah, so fun! So I highly recommend the Quaker Yarn Stretcher. It's like a long boomerang shape. So basically just wear it as a scarf. Or I wear it as a scarf. But it's really fun to have one in like, these are not my, as you can see, these are not my typical colors. But they work really well for your athleisure wear. Because lots of those are cooler colors, blacks and then other things. So yeah, I really do dig it. I don't know why it sat for so long. I guess just dig everything, I guess, is the problem. Or the joy, not the problem. So yeah, okay. So hopefully I'll get that done by next time. We'll see. But so then that's all for knitting. So if you're just here for woolly contents, I bid you adieu. But if you want to hang out and just like rappity rap, then we'll do that now. Let's do it. So what's been going on with you? Really? Did you see my mug that my bestie brought me from Berea? I love Berea. So things have been pretty normal here. We've got, the garden is doing really well. You know, so far, the corn is scaring me a little bit because it's all leaning in the same wind direction. So a little bit, theoretically, the beans are supposed to, I'm doing a Three Sisters garden. So you plant corn and then you plant beans and then you plant winter squash. And the beans are supposed to help to not only, beans are magical in that they fix nitrogen in the soil. So they're basically like a fertilizing agent. But they're also supposed to help structurally support the corn because you do runner beans. So hopefully that will help. But right now the corn is a little bit leany. But it does look really good. It's exciting. And the beans are all coming up, which is very exciting. The cucumbers, we put up trellising for them. We want to have well, I say we. I am literally the only person invested in this in my house. Toba thinks it's cool, like kind of fun, but she's not really like hardcore at all. But I ultimately want to have like permanent trellising available. Not necessarily permanently affixed, but like, for example, like doing cattle panels or just wire welded fencing that we can have so that we can move things. Because of course, like I would like to have the beans make the soil happy in one place and then put tomatoes there the next year, what have you. So like we have some crop rotation, what have you. But for this year, I'm really trying to exercise my not going crazy whole hog on everything. I have a tendency to think that if I start a new craft or a new project or a new gardening venture or a new camping thing or I feel like I have I don't have a tendency. I have a real reality of thinking I need to have everything and in like the best, I don't mean the best tool for the job, but typically that's what it ends up as. But like I tend to go crazy. I tend to jump like 2 feet, 4 hands, There's extra people's hands in there. I don't even know where they came from, but they're there. I've drug them with me. I tend to jump like completely into something and then don't always stick with it. So I'm really trying to be reasonable. For example, this last weekend, before last weekend, Tim has a dance at school. Her school is like 25 minutes away from our house. And so the dance only lasts like an hour and a half, 2 hours. So after I got her to the dance and what have you, I thought, I don't really want to drive all the way home just to sit there for like 45 minutes and then come back. So I went to Lowe's, which was next door, because I needed a metal garbage can for our bird seed. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it was this really lovely moment in Lowe's. Well, I was by myself, which is always super sexy. Let's face it. I was by myself in the plant center on a Friday night, so only other super nerdy folks were there, which is how I like it. And I'm just like tooling through the plant. Now, usually the plant center of any sort of place, while lovely, actually really stresses me out. Because again, I have a tendency to want to go full jump right in. Like I want to like perfectly landscape this area. I've done it twice now and it's failed both times. But usually that involves like requiring yourself to spend a bunch of money, and then if it doesn't go well, you feel really bad that you've spent all that money and then it didn't work out. And like, so then like it just creates stress in that like plant environment. But it was really nice. I just had this very chill experience where I was like, I'm just gonna look because we might need one more coleus for this, or is that what they're called? No, I just said that. I'm not even sure anymore. Whatever. I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. This shade foliage plant, because there's one that was already there, which we did not plant, by the way. There was one that was already there, and it was like kind of next to a naked spot. And we're like, oh, maybe we could get another one of those because it seems to be doing well in this spot. So I was like, oh, I'll go get one of those. And so I was like, just tooling around, and I said, oh, I'll try an Astleby because they're somewhat similar in their light requirements. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. It was a $7 purchase. I feel comfortable that the $7 coleus will work out. But it was like this really nice thing to not have to be like, oh, well, we have a 25 by 3 foot area that needs to be filled, and oh, I can't, oh, how many plants we're gonna need, and I'm not sure what lights are gonna. So it was really nice just to have that like super chill gardening experience. Of course, it was then followed by the most unchill store experience of my recent life. Gus just sighed at me. He says, it's true. So I'm there as a Friday night. I know that I had looked online because we need a metal trash can for the birdseed because there was a mouse and it got into one of the bags and it was the happiest mouse. I'm pretending it was one mouse. I hear you saying it wasn't one. Hush. And it was the happiest, fattest mouse. I'm surprised we didn't like walk into the garage the next morning with it just being like wearing my Ursa sweater, just chilling, like sunflower seed kernels hanging out of its mouth. Whatever. But we need to get a trash can to put it in because, of course, mice are awesome and they can chew through anything, essentially. So that was the way to go. So I knew that they had this 31-gallon galvanized trash can. And yes, we actually do need a 31-gallon trash can for our birdseed because these birds are hogs. And I might as well buy 2 20-pound bags of birdseed at a time versus 1 because I don't go to Tractor Supply every day. And peanuts and all this stuff. Anyway. So, I have my little coleus and my little Astleby in my little cart. I go and I find the trash can. I put the trash can in the cart. And then I'm like, oh, that's right. I also wanted to get a 5-gallon bucket because strangely enough, in this whole house, we have no 5-gallon buckets. How does that happen? It's like, oh, I'm here. I might as well just go ahead and get a bucket. I know somebody out there is like, you could just walk down the street and somebody will throw a bucket at you. It just hasn't happened yet, okay? So I just bought a new one. Also, I wanted one with this foamy handle that is going to break in like 2 seconds, but whatever. In my head, it's going to be okay. Anyway, I needed a bucket. And I needed a food safe bucket. And there was one there I could buy. So I didn't think anything about it. I just like, oh, I'm just taking my little grocery cart over. And then I'm like, oh, I can't put a bucket and this giant trash can in the same cart. I'll just open up the trash can, put the bucket in the trash can. And of course, I don't want to put the lid back on the trash can because I don't want it to look like I'm trying to steal this $4 bucket, because that's what would happen to me. Or I would forget, by the time I got to the checkout that I had a bucket in there, and then I would get to my car and it was like a whole thing, and then I couldn't leave my pants alone because it was too hot and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll just leave the trash can lid off. If you don't know, the combination of galvanized trash can with 5-gallon plastic bucket inside and lid off is literally the loudest sound you can make inside of a Lowe's. By the way, the floor in Lowe's is also like cement and not even. Like, it's Indiana. Like, we have potholes inside of our Lowe's. It's just how it happens here. We have minus 37 infrastructure. It's terrible. There are sinkholes in Lowe's, basically, as I'm saying to you. So, but of course, in the moment, I don't realize that it's because there's a trash, I don't realize it's the combination of factors that is creating this, like, I literally could have run through that Lowe's screaming. I said this on Instagram. I could have run through there screaming and topless. And I have big flappy boobs that would make flappy noises on their own. I could have been having flappy boobs. And let's face it, other things flapping too. Everything flaps. It's a whole flappy body. I could have been running through there naked, white as the whitest. See this? This is me with a tan. Like, white. I could have screamed. I could not have drawn more attention to myself, because people would have been embarrassed for me, so they would have looked away. Instead, it sounds like I have, I don't know, decided to carry a jet plane inside of a trash can through the Lowe's. I cannot explain to you how loud it was. I literally can't explain it. But I am so, at the moment, I'm so confused about how loud it is and how embarrassed I am that it's so loud. I'm like trying to like put my hand in the trash can to like deaden the noise, you know, like you do with like an instrument, to like put your hand on it, deadens the vibration. Doesn't do a thing. I like try to put my whole arm on top of the trash can, thinking somehow like I'm grounding it or somehow I'm gonna like decrease the amount of insanely loud vibration that's happening. Okay, clearly I told you about the 5-gallon bucket, right? That's what it was. It was the bucket inside the trash can. But I was so overwhelmed with how loud it was, how confused I was about how loud it was, how completely unprepared I was to be this embarrassed on a Friday night in Lowe's, that I couldn't like figure out that if I took that bucket out of there, it probably would have been less loud. But let's just pretend that I didn't know that, because I didn't. So just ride with me. just don't make fun of me at the moment, because I just didn't know. If I'd had somebody else there, they could have been like more outside the situation looking in and been like, dude, clearly there's an empty plastic bucket inside of a metal garbage can, and you're driving a shopping cart that's already prone to vibration over a cement floor. Like, this is probably a combination that is not safe for human ears. And I've been like, oh, you're totally right. I'll just lift this bucket out of here, carry that bucket separately. In my head, that never occurred to me. It was just that like demons spontaneously had inhabited the trash can and were having their own little like Friday night pagan revelry in there that I had no control over. I couldn't just take the trash can out of the buggy, because I had my plant babies in there that I felt very good about and like I had already bonded with on some level. And I couldn't just abandon them in the middle of the store. I couldn't be that person. So instead I had to be the person who was just making like jet level amounts of noise. Oh my gosh, it was so loud. So I'm super embarrassed, right? And like, You would not think that I get embarrassed for this podcast, right? Like I sit and talk to the camera and talk to you and reveal embarrassing things about myself all the time. By the way, I need to talk about that one day. We need to have like a summer episode because I need to talk to you about like rash cream and stuff. But so I'm just telling you, I'm vulnerable, right? Like I'm willing to be embarrassed, but I am mentally prepared to be embarrassed. Usually, like usually as a fat woman going into certain situations, I'm pretty confident that yes, there will be embarrassment, but I am prepared and I am going to take up my space because I'm a human being. I was not prepared to be embarrassed at the Lowe's. I just wasn't mentally prepared for it at all. And so I just turned into like a giggling fool because I didn't know what to do. It was so loud. Okay, so I'm reading this book. See, that's all I'm going to blame it on that. I'm reading this book called The Nature Fix. This whole episode is really tying well into each other. I'm reading this book about the Nature Fix, and it talks at some point about how with increasing decibel levels of noise, you have effectively like lower standardized test scores. So really, no wonder I couldn't think that there was a bucket in there, and if I took the bucket out, probably would have solved like 80% of the volume problem. It was so loud I couldn't think. That's clearly what it was. N equals 1, okay? So I got out of the store, and in my head I was like, okay, I'm out of the store. No parking lots! The sinkholes in the store were so much better than the sinkholes in the parking lot. Basically, I had to traverse the Rocky Mountains. The Donner Party was there. They were eating each other. And I was like, they were like, we don't even want to eat you because we're so embarrassed by how loud that trash can is. You just need to pass us by, even though you're clearly the most moist and delectable human we could partake of in this parking lot. No, we don't have anything to do with you. Just move on. It was so loud. So loud. To this point, I'm just like this. Not that anybody can hear me, because guess what? There's a giant little trash can in my trash can. I mean, people are literally, I mean, you know how big a Lowe's is, right? If you're not from the United States, a Lowe's is a huge Walmart-y type store. I mean, they're very big. People from the entire other side of the parking lot are like, whack, to see who is making all of this noise. It's me. Oh my gosh. And then, of course, I couldn't even get the trash can in my van. I mean, I could, but it was like, I just was so overwhelmed by how much volume it was making. All I could think was that it was going to be that loud on the way home, too. I won't lie. I was like, I've got to, like, put sandbags in this. I don't have sandbags in my car. I need sandbags to put in this trash can so it doesn't make so much noise on the way home. It wasn't until I literally got home that I was really like, oh, that bucket. Yeah, that bucket was a big part of the problem. So whatever. The next time you need to buy a giant metal trash can, don't put a bucket in it. The more you know. Ding! Oh my gosh. So embarrassing. Should we even talk about anything else? Should I just end it there? Probably should, but I won't. Because I feel like I can't end it on that note. And also I want to talk about other stuff. What else did we do? We went on a little hike. Now, hike is really a strong word. We took a walk around. Eagle Creek is actually a really big city park for the U.S. And it's a reservoir that's on the north end of our town, which means it's a man-made body of water. And so you can, and there's a bird sanctuary. Part of it is a bird sanctuary. And you can hike down. It is a hike. It's a lot of vertical change right there. But anyways, you walk down and you can like walk. There's, you know, the way the bird sanctuary is constructed, it's kind of like walled off is not the right word, but walled off with land. So that it's separate from the rest of the reservoir because it's a sanctuary. So a part of that, because of that, you can actually walk around this, so you have water on either side. It's a really nice little walk, but I will say, it's only perhaps the third time we've walked with Gus since we got him. I know that's embarrassing to admit, but it's been cold, yo. And the other, it's the first time we've walked with him where we've had a lot of dog encounters. Like, we've walked with him during the week before and like really just not run into that many people. It's not just the third walk now that I think about it. But it's the first walk where we ran into a lot of folks because it was on Memorial Day, which is like a bank holiday in the United States. So lots of folks were out. It was really nice weather, so lots of folks were out. It was early in the morning, so it wasn't too crazy. But Gus, all 12 pounds of him really needs to be trained because I didn't realize, I mean, I guess I did realize it because one other time we've gone with him, he's done this, but I just didn't, it wasn't that big of a problem because we just saw the dog once and I thought it was just like that, whatever. I just didn't think. I didn't think there was a bucket in the trash can. So, but apparently Gus is a lunge barker at other dogs when we're walking. Of course, he's 12 pounds. And, like, he's half the size of most of the dogs. Okay, like, smaller than that, even. Of most of the dogs that he's trying to attack to, you know, protect us, I'm sure. It's really embarrassing. Like, there's nothing like... Okay, so I'm already fat in the outdoors, which, by the way... What's going on, fat people in Indiana? I know there's more of you out there. There's a lot of you. It's Indiana. How do I never see any other fat people? I totally just spit. How do I never... Oh, UPS. Oh, it's not for me. I don't have anything coming today. How do I never see any other fat people when we're walking? Okay, that's not true. I don't never see. But, like, I didn't even see any small fats. I didn't even see any, like, thick people. I didn't see any, like... Come on. So I'm already feeling a little bit out of place. Actually, I didn't really feel out of place. I didn't think about it till like later in the walk when he was really going crazy. And I was that exciting level of like lobster red combine my like semi-translucent skin with cardiovascular exercise and the sun. I am a horrendous color, which does kind of look like dangerous. So it's a level of red that is disturbing. I can imagine. Like, if you didn't know me, didn't know that I had this semi-translucent skin and that I regularly do turn that color, you probably would be concerned that I was perhaps dying. But nobody was actually concerned. There were not worried faces. There were disgusted faces. So the combination of, like, me taping up a lot of space and the fact that I'm walking the lungy crazy dog, because everybody else is like hands off that dog at this point. Nobody else wants to own him. The whole family is like, no, we don't know who that dog is. So like the combination of me and then this dog just like, I mean, I've got him completely shored up, so it's not like he's going to go anywhere, which of course is probably exacerbating the situation, but whatever, like whatever, we're going to work on the training, don't worry. But like, I cannot explain to you the level of contempt I received. Oh my gosh. There were a few sympathetic looks. Which I was like, sorry, he's new. He's not really that new, apparently. He's new to this activity. Sorry, he's new. You know, like, I got a few, like, you know, sympathy looks. But mostly I just got a lot of, like that's too nice looking. That's too nice looking. I received a lot of contempt that day. Actually, more contempt than I did about the garbage can. That was more just like, they were as confused as I was about the garbage can. But this was like straight up contempt. Like, oh, poor lady, take your poor fat self and your little crazy dog away from here. And I was like, no, thank you. I will stay here. But still, it's ridiculous. But it was really a nice walk. Because it was a beautiful day. Even though this dog was really annoying. Don't worry, we're going to work on it. It's going to be fine. I hope so, because we're going camping soon. Yikes. I can't take a whole weekend of that. I will totally have a meltdown. But but the part of the reason I tell you that is because, like, there's this weird thing, right? Like, when you're fat, like, in my past, I have definitely tried to be the good fat. Like, the fat that's like, oh, but my numbers are okay, and occasionally I move my body, and I do eat a salad. Like, I have definitely been guilty of that in my past, and so I don't want to do that anymore. So there's like this tension whenever I am like trying to be visible in the outside of like being very check-in with myself about like why I'm trying to be visible, doing things like riding bikes or walking or whatever. But I do feel like I can feel clean about it in my heart that I'm not trying to be a good fat, because a good fat just wouldn't be fat, right? But I'm like super fat, so I'm not a good fat. So, but at the same time, like a part of me is also just like, dude, when you don't see anybody else doing those things, then you don't feel it's a representation thing, right? Like if you don't see any other fat people doing hikes or biking, then you don't think you can do it, because quite frankly, everybody tells you you can't. To watch a commercial about being fat is to like think that you're going to die at 25 and do so sorrowfully and alone. Do you feel the soapbox? I'm going to step away from the soapbox, but let me just not get started on commercials about being fat. Just gonna sit in it for a second. Light me up. But you know what I mean? Like, so part of it is like, oh, but like it's fun. Like if you like doing these things, then do them. If you don't like doing them, then like that's fine too. But if you like doing them, do them. You're allowed to do them. You probably will enjoy doing them. I'm reading this book called The Nature Fix by Florence Williams, which I want to talk about more about. Right now I'm just listening to it, so I don't like have good highlights and stuff, but I do want to go back through and talk about it more, because it is really interesting. And it talks about, like, I always know I feel so much better after we've like gone camping or we've done a hike and been outside for like, you know, more than 20 minutes, or, you know, we've been outside for 45 minutes and up. I always feel, actually anytime we're outside I feel better, but I've always thought like, oh, it's because I'm doing cardiovascular exercise and that like creates endorphins, and I'm not saying that that's not anything to do with it, but there is also just this reality that this book talks about, that actually just being in a non-urban environment, being in a natural landscape, has like crazy good health benefits. And I mean health is a tricky word as a fat person. But like measurable things, like it lowers your cortisol levels measurably. It lowers blood pressure. It lowers resting heart rates. And that's not from cardiovascular benefit. Like they've actually teased out. It's literally just from being in a natural environment and like your mind finding a different way to exist in that environment. So like, I don't know. But like, probably a lot of fat people could really do well from having slightly less cortisol in our lives. Because it's super stressful being fat. But anyway, so like, I don't know. Maybe that was like a weird thing to talk about, but whatever. I talk about weird stuff all the time. So anyway, I hope you just know that like when I talk about really enjoying those things, I'm not trying to be a good fat. I'm not trying to like be like, I'm okay because I do these things. I have totally done it in the past. 100%. And that is regrettable, but part of life. But if you do enjoy being outside, like please do it. Please don't let your A1C or like what your doctor has to say about it affect your ability to do things just because you can't, you think you can't. You totally can if you want to. Like, you're allowed to be out there. You're allowed to do stuff that you enjoy. You're allowed to wear a bathing suit. Will this be the year that I wear an actual bathing suit? I don't know, but maybe it will be. But if you can't, that's okay too. Because again, as I just said, I have not worn an actual bathing suit. So if you're like, dude, I don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine too. It's okay. But like, if you want to, go do stuff, because then other fat people can see you doing stuff and they can be like, oh, well, I guess she did that. And like, nobody stopped her. I totally wore shorts though. I did do that. It was very exciting. It was terrifying for a minute. Actually, it wasn't terrifying, but I was a little concerning. I did wear shorts to the Tractor Supply, which I was pretty proud. Now you're like, dude, it's the Tractor Supply. Whatever. Tractor Supply is like Macy's in Indiana. It's where people go. It's Tractor Supply. Come on. But I did totally wear shorts. And nobody was like, oh my gosh, you're wearing shorts and you're not allowed to do that because you have... The reason I don't like to wear shorts is because I have like arm butts on my knees. So like I have like thigh overhang fat. It's true, I do. Whatever. I have like a little bit of I have thigh overhang fat that like kind of comes up, and then like I have like an arm butt, but on the back of my knee. And like actually twice, because it's like one on either side of my knee. I've always been super self-conscious about it. I am super self-conscious about it. But I totally wore shorts. Now they were not short shorts. They were like short alls. They were short alls, y'all. I totally have short alls now. I'm telling you. Duluth trading. I'm not going to lie to you. I can't find pants usually because my thighs are ginormous. Like I literally I push Torrid to like get fabric around my thighs. Even Torrid is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. The Duluth pants totally do fit. Well, the short alls fit. They probably have less positive ease than they're supposed to, but whatever, they're stretchy, it's fine. They have like a stretch woven, so like, you know, when you sit down, you're not like, ugh. And they don't like bite into your fat leg. I'm not a commercial for Duluth. I'm sure they would not endorse me endorsing them. But I totally wore my short alls. Nobody ran away. Nobody even seemed to look at me twice. Now, I will say this, I was with a man. And that does change how people look at you. It's messed up and weird, but that's a discussion for another day. Whatever. I totally was very short. And in fact, somebody else's dog in the Tractor Supply giantly pooped in the middle of the Tractor Supply. So their life was way more embarrassing that day than mine was. Just saying. I kind of dog. Oh my gosh. It's disturbing. So maybe that's why nobody stared. Because everybody was too busy being like, oh my gosh, did you see that dog? Woo! Whatever. Just saying, my legs were not the headline of that day's news. Okay, well, I think that's enough talking. I'm sure there was something else I was supposed to say. I got sidetracked by the fact that I wore shorts and it was not apocalyptical. Apocalyptical? I don't think that's a word. Apocryph. Never mind. Stop talking. All right. I think that's enough of me. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.